Are we going to appall you with something confidential and disgusting? Let's hope so, because that is what you really like. Unconfessed crimes of buried wickedness. If that is what brings you to us, the prospect of hearing horrors, you shall not go unrewarded.
I don't believe it. The whole city is talking. You hear it all over. What a story. What a scandal. What a comedy. What a tragedy. Incredible. I don't believe it. Who can believe it? What horrors have you heard? Tell us. Tell us. Tell us at once. Tell us about Wolfgang. Amadeus. Mozart. Mozart. Mozart?
How good is he?
And welcome back to the SuperCaZt, the show where we talk about movies and I guess some other things that are kind of super. This is Steve Z here, and along with me always is Superfosh. And how are you doing, Superfosh?
Dude, I am doing very well, man. Very excited for this episode. We've been talking about it for quite a while now, and just ready to get going, man.
I hear you, man. This is a film that I've been wanting to see for a long time, and I'm just mad at myself for waiting to see it because it just checks so many boxes for me.
Oh yeah.
But before we get into that, I want to talk a little about just history based on a true story, because Amadeus is obviously based on a true story, or at least somewhat. I just want to pick your brain a little bit about what does that mean to you if you hear based on a true story?
Well, and I mean, you're a teacher, so you probably can give a better answer for this, and I definitely want to hear your answer. But as far as I'm concerned, man, like, it just depends. I think, there's all these movies that come out that say based on a true story, and when you look at the history of it, it's like nothing like it was. Like, it just, things get stretched out. And that's kind of what's going on with Amadeus a little bit. But I can definitely separate the two. I think now, more than ever, that we can find out true story because of the internet. Of course, even in the internet, you gotta watch what you read and stuff. But I think just for this conversation here, I think that for me personally, I can enjoy a movie that's based on a true story, even if I find out it wasn't exactly like this. What about you?
Well, I'm just impressed that you actually have more media literacy than most of the people out there, because most people think that when you're watching a movie, oh, this happened in real life, exactly how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get into all the cases about it, because it can be controversial at times. To me, I just okay, like you're saying, the history is the history, the film is the film. Let's look at them separately.
Yep.
I mean, even in history, that's sort of a interesting thing, because I mean, unless you were actually there witnessing these events yourself, you're still piecing things together with sources.
Good point.
But I think when I hear based on the true story, I think it's different than, let's say, a documentary.
Yeah.
And even a documentary does have an agenda. It does have something that's trying to present a theme that it's trying to do. It's not totally unbiased in nature. But I think based on a true story is definitely a narrative. And that's the way you got to look at it, is what does the filmmakers want to highlight about this person's story or this event? And I think sometimes that can be done really well, such as, let's say, I mean, how many people probably knew who William Wallace was before Braveheart came out?
True.
I mean, unless you lived in Scotland, he was just not on your mind. But then after that, you're like, hey, I'm kind of interested in Scottish history now. I'm trying to learn about this William Wallace guy more. And I know they obviously exaggerated some elements in that film and probably made up some new stuff, but at the same time, I think that doesn't really matter. I think that's just a great film. Any of yours, just like, you think of based on true story and you're just like, this is my film, I really like this one?
Oh man, well, first of all, you got to go with the one we're talking about today. Amadeus is obviously based on this quote-unquote rivalry between Mozart and Salieri, which, when you read the real history, that their rivalry wasn't really as fierce as they show it in the film, and I'm okay with that. I am very cool with that, so that doesn't bother me too much. Walk the Line, talking about Johnny Cash's rise and how some of that was stretched. And even as recently as the Elvis movie with Tom Hanks playing Colonel Parker, and some of that was a little I know controversial. That's kind of the things that I think about. What about you, man? How you see it?
Well, I guess before I get into that, I want to talk about what the thing you're saying. I think the big thing that you have to go into when you realize this film
Mm,
is what are they highlighting? What aspects of the
yeah.
character? What story are they doing? And that's kind of what I was thinking about as you were talking about Elvis, but also these others. I mean, like basically, this is Elvis through a 2024
Mm-hmm.
lens,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, very hard to do. I think if you're living there during Elvis's time, I think
Mm,
you could probably do it a little bit better. I know Carpenter did a pretty good Elvis sort of biopic thing.
mm-hmm.
Walk the Line, same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
this is, we're trying to make a movie in 2008 that captures this feeling of this time period, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's totally foreign. Like the editing techniques, the
Mm-hmm.
everything that's utilized makes it more of a modern film, and that's what's
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting thing. I mean, I think there's some great ones out there. I'm trying to think of a good sports one other than Cool Runnings. I mean, that's my go-to one there. And I like how that one they
Yeah.
actually used the footage from the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics and intercut it with the film. I think
Yeah.
that adds a little bit more to it. I mean, I know obviously they probably dramatized certain aspects, made it to like the whole thing with the dude and his father and all that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a cool thing. I think people just they choose this particular format to kind of pull people in somehow, some sort of a way. And I guess that goes even to like into horror films, like where they
Yeah.
always say based on a true story, like
Right.
this is based on Jeffrey Dahmer or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned sports. I think whenever I think of like a sports based on a true story, I think you have to go with the movie Rudy, because there's a lot of stuff like there's a scene where the whole team comes into the coach's office and they throw their jerseys on there like I'm not suiting up, the team's not suiting up, and as powerful as that scene is, I found out later on that that would never happen. Like they would all be kicked off the team if they did something like that. So while it's a good visual and it kind of makes the point that the team, is behind Rudy, stuff like that didn't actually happen. And when I hear that, I'm okay with that. I know there's some people they're like, "Oh man, that wasn't true. I am so disappointed." But that doesn't bother me as much because, like we said, I can separate a movie that's supposed to entertain me from real life, and I'm okay with that. Some can't, but I guess it's just how you, the individual, perceive the what's going on.
Yeah, I hope people keep that in mind. I mean, we got people that'll just read everything on the internet. It's like, oh yeah, that's real. Hopefully, people do apply a little more critical thinking and media literacy to the stuff they watch and they
Right.
ingest. But this film, oh my
Mm.
gosh, it's as I was saying as I started off, I've wanted to see this movie for a long time.
Right.
I actually got really close during I think it was spring break, either a year ago, 2 years ago, or one of those
Mhm.
extended breaks, and I was like, I feel like watching a long movie. I heard this
Yeah.
one's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I just didn't hit play. I was just like,
Mm.
I wasn't feeling it that night. I almost did it. I actually watched the trailer several times. I'm like, hey, that was
Yeah.
pretty good. I couldn't figure out if it was like a murder mystery or a biopic, what it was. I just knew it
Right.
was about Mozart. And I guess that's been my whole experience with this film. I knew it was good. I knew it's about Mozart, and I know it inspired Falco to write Rock Be Amadeus. Other than that, I did not know anything about it. That being said, I still had another chance to watch it. I put it off because I heard about the 4K was coming out,
Mhm.
and I finally popped it in a few weeks ago. And as I was saying earlier, it was a great experience. It's a film that
Mm.
it almost seems like it's made for me as far as checking different interests I have, obviously history, music,
Yeah.
and just great filmmaking across the board. I think this film, a movie that all movie lovers will love,
Mm.
but I think if you're into the other arts, you're probably going to like it even more.
Yeah, I have to echo everything you just said because I'm a person that's got a musical theater background. I've done some musical theater. Never really did an opera, but I did musical theater, which kind of came out of what opera is. So I definitely had an interest in that. Also, love movies. I mean, that's what we do in this podcast. And I don't think I'd ever watched this film until a few years ago when I saw it. I don't know if it was streaming or what. And I just, like you said, it just spoke to me. And I mean, it is a long film. And if you got a couple, 3 hours to watch this film, I would, if you haven't already, and by the way, spoiler alert right here at the top, because we are going to spoil most of the film. There'll probably be stuff we forget just because, there's just so much to get to. But yeah, I was so happy that I actually sat down and watched this film, and like you, I was just amazed with it. I felt like this movie was meant for me as well, and I know you and I have been talking about this film quite a while, but I guess probably since we started this show a couple of years ago, and here we are, and I am just so excited to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a religious experience. I mean, even watching it again last night, I was just totally entrenched in it. It's got so many scenes in it where as I'm watching it, I'm like, this is the best scene of the film. And then the next one, I'm like, oh no, I think this is the best scene. It just keeps building and building. And it's anytime you're watching a movie like that, it's a joy. And that's what I really like it. I can't wait. I mean, as we're talking about it, I'm acting like we're not going to talk about this movie for another week or two. Let's get into it.
Yeah, man, let's do this.
So I think the first thing I wanted to ask you is, if you were going to classify this film as a genre, I'm going to see, this is sort of like a filling out question. What genre do you think this movie is?
Ooh. Well, as we said, right at the top, this is based on a true story. I wouldn't necessarily call this like a biography or anything like that, but I don't know. That's such a difficult thing to really answer, in my opinion, because I think it's a mixture of a lot of stuff. I think there's definitely history there, but loosely based. And there's music. There definitely is music there. It's not a traditional musical where they sing a whole song or anything like that, but there is music throughout the film. Whether it be instrumental or some of the operas, songs. So I don't know. That's a tough one, man. You? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm leaning more musical personally, just because those opera scenes, they just will take your breath away. And
that's true. Mm-hmm.
Even during some more of the dramatic scenes, there's music playing in the background. We have Mozart's music all around us.
Yes.
And that's another thing I forgot to mention about this film. Just puts this classical music in my head for days after watching it. And that's when I woke up this morning, and as soon as I wake up, I hear strings in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Amadeus is crazy. But back on the subject, it's I think it's more of a musical, but also is like a character study. I think it's not about Amadeus as much. I think it's more about Salieri.
Yeah.
And sort of his thing. Because I'm glad you didn't answer biopic, because I think that's the wrong answer.
I do too.
I don't think this is about Mozart, even though the movie is called Amadeus.
Right.
I think it's about a lot of things, and I'm sure we're going to have a good conversation about that.
Yeah.
I think it's a musical personally. I think the direction and the music all around it, even when he's writing music, it's almost like this is a musical number. That's the kind of where I'm leaning towards. At the same time, I think it's sort of what you're saying. It's an amalgamation of a lot of things, but definitely don't go in watching it thinking this is going to be a biopic, and that's all it's about. It's about inspiring you about the great genius of Mozart.
Right. No, I agree with that. Talking about the history part, and again, this is kind of based on a true story. The film versus history. Now, in the film, it really talks and plays up the rivalry between F. Murray Abraham's character Salieri and, of course, Tom Halsey playing Mozart. But if you look back in the history books, that really wasn't the case. We just talked about, a minute ago, how, can we separate history and real life? And what about you, man? Like, when you see this film, you think, oh my gosh, they really did, at least from Salieri's point of view, they really did have kind of a rivalry going. But then you find out, no, it wasn't as fierce. Are you okay with that? When you find that out, are you a little disappointed?
Yes, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Right.
I mean, nobody would know who Salieri was if it wasn't for this movie.
Exactly.
So I think it's what I think the movie does well is how it captures this era. It
Yeah.
captures this feeling of, because this is in the middle of the Enlightenment. This is the
Mhm.
world for them that's modernizing. And for us, it's, I mean, not to get too historical, or a history teacher here, I
Yeah.
should say. Um, it's the beginning of the modern world is
Mhm.
what we're seeing, is people are changing their
Mm.
thoughts about the way things have always been done and
Mm.
thinking, let's try to do things differently.
True.
So I think the film captures that very well. I think it obviously captures the way they dress,
Yep.
the housing, the locations, the operas, the music, all of that. I think it captures great. Even Emperor Joseph II, I think they did a good job with him,
Yeah.
as he was called an enlightened ruler. That was sort of his claim to fame, and so that's why
Mm.
he's taken interest in music and art. But at the same time, he's an absolutist. He does not believe in democracy. So
Mhm.
even though he does do a lot of stuff to help the common man of his people, I mean, once again, not to go history lesson on Emperor Joseph II here, but
Yeah.
the guy, I mean, he pretty good. I mean, he in serfdom.
Mhm.
He gives legal protection to these people that have never had legal protection before, like beginning of rights for criminals in his land. So that's awesome. I really like that aspect, that they captured this character very well, I think. And Jeffrey Jones, man, that guy, I did not know he had that in him to be that good of an actor.
I'll tell you what, and you've seen him in Ferris Bueller and a couple other things, but this is a very interesting part because it does play up this thing where he does seem to have a genuine interest in the arts. Salieri writes this little piece of music of, celebrating Mozart's arrival, and Emperor Joseph was like, "Can I play it?" And I mean, he trips all over it, and that's kind of an interesting scene in itself. And we'll go back to it later on. But yeah, just talking about the Emperor itself, that part almost forgets that's the same guy from Ferris Bueller or even Beetlejuice or whatever. And very interesting character for sure.
Yeah, and I think they capture his character very well. I mean, you just look at the portrait of this guy, and
Yeah.
they just made his hair perfectly. They made his costume perfectly, and I think they made the way he would act perfectly. So that part of the history, I think, holds up. I think
Yeah.
they capture this era. I mean, because this guy, yeah, he's conservative about a lot of things, and that's what we see in a lot of the film. Is like he's confused about Mozart's music. He knows it's good, but he's also like, it's a little too much on the ears,
Mhm.
and it's almost like too much too soon with Mozart. And I think that's kind of a
Mhm.
way a lot of these rulers probably feeling during the Age of
Right.
Enlightenment. It's like, yeah, we like what you guys are saying. We want our people to be educated, but hey, we don't want to give away all of our power yet.
Mhm.
And I think we get that with him, how he's like, there should not be ballet in opera so far. I mean, I
Yeah.
love how that gets challenged throughout the
Yep.
film, but
Yep.
also we cannot do the Marriage of Figaro. That is banned in my kingdom. It's just a lot of funny things like that they throw in there. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense, that
Right.
somebody like this that's very conservative on one hand but very progressive on the other would be sort of at odds with what's going on. So I think the filmmakers do a great job with that. The lighting is natural lighting, which I guess they're borrowing from other great historical epics like Barry Lyndon and stuff like that.
Mhm.
All the candlelight really enhances the sort of the realism of the film.
Yes.
There's one aspect I was going to talk to you about, is the
Mhm.
accents.
Ooh.
Because that threw me off. And it still does it. The first like 5 to 10 minutes I'm watching the movie, I'm like, why do they
Yeah.
sound like that? And I want to see what your opinion is first before I share mine of like what they're trying to portray there.
That's an actually good question. You don't really notice it. I mean,
Because they sound American. They don't sound like they're European too much a lot of times.
right.
It sounds like, not even trying to sound like English. I mean, because technically these guys all should be speaking German and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So they should have different accents. And I don't know, that kind of throws me off. Did you ever thought about that too much?
Well, I feel like some of the characters kind of have a little bit more of an accent. Kapellmeister Bono, I think he has a little bit one. The Rosenberg guy has a little bit of an accent, but for Joseph doesn't really, and Salieri not so much. So I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit with some characters and then not at all with others. And it doesn't really detract for me just because I think the movie still holds up very well. But it
Mhm.
is something that is noticeable. But I think if you weren't listening for it or you weren't focused on it, it probably slips by most audiences. What about you?
Yeah, so I think it was an intentional thing. I
Yeah.
think they had, like you were saying, some characters have accents, and I think it's
Hmm.
generally the people that are higher status, higher
Yes.
class,
Right.
and I guess they're playing more of a part. They're not
Yep.
like natural people. I mean, let's look at Leopold
Yeah.
Mozart. I mean, he's
Hmm.
all about the way things are perceived and the way things look. That's why he gets really mad about the marriage and all.
Right.
But and even Salieri, I think I kind of disagree with you. I think he is more of a sort of European sounding guy. But when you hear,
Gotcha.
let's say, Mozart speak or Katerina speak,
Yeah.
they're like common folk.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of what we get. Because to me, I think about the very first scene with we got the two butlers coming up. We
Hmm.
got the guy from Fast Times, and he just sounds like he's from New York or something. And I'm like, it throws me off at first, but
Yeah.
then the more I get into the world, I'm like, I think they're trying to do something about class here. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what they're saying with
Good
these
point.
different accents.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it's
Uh,
it's very jarring with certain characters, especially like
mhm.
Mozart's mother-in-law. I mean, she is just
Oh,
totally embarrassing for him. I mean, I love her entrance,
yeah.
but we'll get into that more in a second. Do you have anything to say about the opening, as I was just mentioning it?
I tell you what, I love this opening because it gets you right into the world. Like you don't know what's going on. It's snowing. It's night, and then you hear this guy start wailing, and he's like Mozart, and it's just such dramatic tone from the get go. I mean, there's no easing into this film, and I love that because you're like, wow, we're getting started now, and I want to talk about the priest in detail a little bit when we get to him here in a minute. But I'll just say it's one of my favorite performances in this entire film. He has a very small part as far as like lines or whatever,
Yeah, I was about to get into him.
but oh my gosh, like his facial expressions. I mean, by the time the end of the movie comes around, you can see this guy is spent. I mean, he is just about the motion's killing him pretty much from what he's hearing. And so I think that's an interesting exchange there. But man, the opening, going back to what you were asking about, I love it because again, it just doesn't ease you into anything. It's just right there, and you're like, okay, what's going on? I'm quite intrigued to see what's going on with this. So yeah, kudos on the opening.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to capture you in that first 10 minutes. You have
Yep.
to feel like you're immersed in
Yep.
the world. And I think they do that. They drop you into the snow
Hmm.
and they contrast it with the ballroom dancing.
Yep.
And then we have these two funny butlers. And it seems like, like you were saying, it establishes the tone because we get a little comedy in there. This is definitely a funny movie at times. But then we get the darkness that is present throughout the film and the
Yep.
darkness of Salieri. Because it's sort of shocking when those guys knock down the door and you see this guy have blood all over his throat. And
Mhm.
then before we know it, we're in a mental hospital.
Yep.
We got the priest coming to see this guy. And it's like you're saying, it's the frame story is very interesting because it could have just told the whole thing narratively, but the idea, let's start at the end of the movie
Yeah.
and then kind of go back. I think that was a very good idea by the filmmakers.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Let's get back to the frame story. What else do you have to say about it? Like introduction of Salieri and this priest character.
Oh man, that's one of my favorite scenes, just because you really find out a lot about the character, and I'm going to say character of Salieri, as far as what's being portrayed in the film. So you really find out a lot about this character within the first few minutes, because you realize, yeah, this guy is a musical genius, but he craves the attention. He craves the adulation. And when the priest starts saying, that everybody's equal and everybody's, you know, all this kind of stuff, and it really almost pisses Salieri off because he's like, you know, I went celibate, I did all this, and God did not bless me at all. And I mean, he is just mad. He is just really, really mad, and he asks the priest something like, how well do you know music? And I'm just like, wow. I mean, he just really wants to show that the man, as far as music is concerned, you learn all you really need to know about this version of Salieri anyway within that first conversation with the priest.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant writing.
Yeah.
Just establishing this rivalry that's present
Mhm.
here. He's like, yeah, you've heard of me.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, no, never have. And then he starts playing some of the different tunes and then finally
Yeah.
plays Mozart. And he's like, oh, I know that one. Did you write that one? He's like, no, that was not me. So we get that sort of envy, that sort of
Yes.
rivalry already established. And I don't know. I think it's a really good idea to kind of start the movie out like this, like, because it gets us into this character,
Mhm.
and it's a lot better than just like, or 1786, here we
Yeah.
are, or something like that, Vienna.
Right.
It's really neat to kind of just drop you in there and then
Mm.
get into this character. I like this because it highlights what I was talking about. This film is really great filmmaking going on, down to the detail of let's have this guy play a slightly out of tune piano here. I mean, that's got to drive that guy crazy. I mean, I would imagine if he's
Yeah.
he's sitting in this hospital and he can't tune it himself, but he's got the music here. I like seeing the scenes where they jump back to them, like you were saying, because we see our priest slowly but surely get more aghast at what is being confessed to him. He's just like, what? You did that?
Yeah.
You did that?
Mm.
Oh my gosh. And by the end of it, he feels sorry for this guy, I think. I
Man.
think he feels bad for Salieri. He feels bad for the situation. And I guess he's supposed to be like sort of how we're viewing this story, is we're supposed to be that character basically throughout the movie.
Yeah, if you watch the priest, and like I said, he doesn't say a whole lot except for maybe the first bit of the film, but every time they show him, he is more and more like shocked and just spent by the end of it, to where his face is like blood red, and he just like looks up at him like, wait, what did you do? And he doesn't want to hear anymore, but he can't move. You know, he is stuck in that situation, and you really feel for him. Because who would want to be in that situation, you know? So yeah, I think that's one of my favorite performances, just because it's so natural, and it would be exactly how most of us would react, hearing something that shocking.
Yeah, and I think as we're getting more of the movie, I love it how continue on with Salieri and how just he's portrayed in this movie. I love this stuff when he's a kid.
Yes.
I love that we get his motivation at this point. We get that this guy loves music. He worships Mozart.
Yep.
And he just wants nothing to do other than that. And this is kind of the interesting thing about his prayer. So I don't think his prayer's bad. I think it's just his goal with that is kind of perverted. I think it's good to say, I want to create music. I want to be like my hero here. I think the recognition and the admiration should not be your end goal, especially when you're praying like this. I don't know. I think this sort of thing that gets established between him and God early on, I think it's very compelling.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things about it is we don't see Mozart pray for, any of this like Salieri does. And he means it. At the time that he asks his prayer, he means it, and he makes all these big promises about being celibate and all that stuff, and he honors that as far as we know. And so when he's looked over by the emperor later on, and then Salieri just turns his back. So it's like, what he really wanted was this position that, yes, he liked music, but music was just a tool for him to get more recognition. Where I think, at least based on how these characters are portrayed, I think Mozart truly loved the music, whether anybody else did or not. I think that's the difference in the two characters, at least how they're portrayed in this film.
I think that's partially true. I think he definitely uses music to get power. I mean, if you're the court composer, I mean, that's a lot of power there. And he abuses that power, and that's kind of what we see is power can corrupt. And I think early on he was not. I think he did love music for music's sake. I mean, a person that prays something like that just wants to create music, and it tortures them that they cannot create it in the same way as this other guy. and that he can recognize how genius Mozart. I love that line where he's like, the God made it to where I could understand how great this guy is, but he did not give me the ability to create something like that. It's just wonderful writing, I think. And this character is very compelling because there is inner conflict. Yes, he's the antagonist of the story, I think. But at the same time, there is some inner conflict going on with him. He wants to be good in a way, such as he's not going to actually sleep with Katerina or something like that.
Right.
He's not going to break his oath there. But at the same time, he's so terrible that he's going to set her up into almost doing it and basically torture her and do all this other terrible stuff eventually. And then eventually turn his back on God and everything. It's very compelling character, just what drives him. And I think it's whenever we first introduce Mozart is when we see sort of those fissures appear, like saying that this guy, he probably shouldn't have met Mozart, I think, because he comes in thinking, oh, this is the best thing ever. I'm going to finally meet this guy, my hero, after all this time. And then Mozart is this perv that's just on this floor with this woman playing some games where they like talk backwards and stuff. It's just hilarious that how he first meets this hero of his.
Well, what do they say? Never meet your heroes. I mean, I've heard that before, so maybe there is something to that. And that's an interesting thing too, because when he walks into this party, and you actually see Mozart chasing the girl, but you don't know that it's Mozart at first because they hadn't introduced him yet. So this guy's just running through the party, whatever. And he was like, where is this guy? Will it show his genius? Will I be able to recognize him? I guess he had never seen a picture of him or anything like that. So he doesn't know what Mozart looked like. He's not familiar with him from a physical standpoint. But then you get to this guy, and like you said, he's playing these weird games with these girls. But I think Mozart said something, and it's one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, where he says that, I'm a vulgar man, but my music is not. And I think there's a bunch of ways to interpret that, and I want to get yours in just a second, but I'll go ahead and say that I feel like the reason he says that is that he is not using his talent just to get famous like Salieri is, or that's his main focus. I think he truly loves music in its purest form, just because he understands it. It moves him. It really describes who he is through his music. And so I think that that's why he says that, is that he views music as pure as anything just because of what it does for him.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that, because you see in this introduction where when he hears his music, it's like a complete 180. He just goes from this silly Joker character to, that's my music.
Yep.
And then he goes out there and he does his thing, and it's great to see that happen. He just goes into the flow of conducting this orchestra.
Right.
And it's great because, like you're saying, he creates to create. It's something that drives him. It's an obsession. He doesn't make any money off of it. I mean, he works all the time, but he never makes money. I just love that. That's a great thing that it's saying about art and how it drives the individual. And those that are truly genius like this, that's the only way they can do it. They are compelled to create. Yeah, he probably enjoyed some of the lifestyle, the cool people he got to meet, but I think that's what makes the portrayal of this character so interesting, is that he is his own person. He is not of this world.
Nope.
He is, as they try to say, he's kind of ethereal. He's like an angelic guy when he's creating his stuff. He's communicating for God, but at the same time, he's kind of vulgar. He's kind of silly. He's kind of a joke. And I think the laugh shows that the most. I didn't practice my Mozart laugh. I was going to try to do one here. But this is my favorite part of the performance, is this laugh. What do you think about the Halsey laugh?
Oh my gosh, man. That I don't know who came up with that. I don't know if that was Halsey coming up with that, or who said you should laugh like this, but it's equal parts annoying yet funny at the same time. It catches everybody off guard, especially when they first hear it, like that scene where he comes in there and plays Salieri's little march that Salieri wrote for him, and he just does that little laugh, and I'm not even going to try it, but he does it, I think, a couple of times in the scene, and every time they look at him like, Okay, all right. And but I don't think. But that's the thing. I think that, and here's the difference. I think in the two characters of Salieri and Mozart. Mozart is genuine. Everything he says and does is genuine.
Hmm.
Where most things that Salieri does is for a specific reason, is calculated, is whereas Mozart is not. I think even with his laugh, because like nobody would really would laugh like that, except if that was just their laugh. That's just how he does it. I've never heard if that laugh is actually like historically correct. Maybe you have or not. I don't know. But I think just for the film's sake and the story that it's telling, is that it's showing that this guy is being true to himself the entire film. And love him or hate him, this is who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's just this man child. He's this
Right.
silly dude that loves dressing up and wearing wigs. He's like, "This is so great. I want them all."
Yeah.
And he's great. I love that the laugh, like you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
it throws everybody off. Like they just look, wait a second, that's not polite. That's not dignified. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's just who he is. Maybe it's a Salzburg thing.
Yeah.
It's great. And I think that's my favorite part of Holt's performance is, like
Mhm.
you're saying, he captures the life of a person like this, a person that is just genuine and just loves. And yes, they're going to do some things that are going to annoy you, such as
Mhm.
make fun of you at a party or something like that.
Yeah.
But he is just being who he is. He's genuine.
Right.
And he's definitely the hero of the film. I love watching him create. I love watching him get excited about something. It's like, oh, I've got this opera. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
And just how he giggles about it sometimes, just like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
And I also like how it captures just how brilliant this guy is. I mean, he can
Oh man.
hear a song once and then come in and start playing it by ear and then start adding better changes to it. He's like, oh, I think it's better like this.
Yeah.
And I just love that flex. And I love it how he's
Yep.
got this whole orchestra of people in his head. It's just insane. I just love what they did with this character. And we'll come back to Salieri again later because I mean he's there, but
Yeah.
I think Tom's performance of this character it definitely makes the movie.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, that's the thing. I know that Murray Abraham won the Oscar, but Tom Holtz was nominated for Best Actor in the same category. And I venture to say that as much as I do love Abraham's performance, I think Holtz might have the better performance just because how committed he is to this character and how genuine his performance truly is. I mean, think about it. He's a man child. He's never gotten a chance to grow up. He's always had to be, in these concerts and all over the world performing and stuff. And so he's just never really matured. And I think that's one of the brilliances of Tom Holtz's performance is showing that even though he has this immense God-given talent that probably nobody has had before or since, he's still got flaws, and he is still very much a human being with these flaws, and there's nothing he can do about it. He's just stuck in this situation, and so I think that's why music is so important to him because it is his rock. It's the thing that keeps him from going insane or whatever. And I think Tom is brilliant with that. And I think the way he portrays Mozart's talent, period, which correct me if I'm wrong, I think that he did learn how to play on piano correctly so that if anybody saw it on screen, saw his hands, they would be like, oh yeah, he's playing that right. And so I give him a lot of credit for that because you and I both know we both played piano in our past lives, and it's not easy. That's not an easy instrument to play. So for him to go that extra mile with it, I give him so much credit for that for sure.
Yeah, I think he should have gotten an Oscar too. I think just the commitment. I'm gonna spend months learning to play these songs.
Yep.
And just going into the whole body experience, like
Right.
as he conducts the orchestra. I mean, I think you can make that look very silly.
Hmm.
And I think at times he is silly, but he's kind of being silly with the music. I think that's just great acting. I think it's awesome. I think Abraham probably won it because it's a more complex character, I think,
Right,
and like
right.
he's playing like he's good on the
Yeah.
surface, but he's really dark and evil on the inside. And he's got a few like just major scenes, like when he's burning the crucifix and things like that, and you just see
Ooh.
how dark and evil this guy is. I think that's what probably made people kind of appeal to them, because most people do like the villain better usually in a movie.
And I don't have a problem with his performance at all. And I am, it was probably
I really like him as the old man.
yes, yeah. I think that's where he shines specifically. All those scenes with the priest are some of my favorite scenes of his. But I think the scene that clinched the Oscar for me with Tom is towards the end of the film when Mozart is literally on his deathbed and trying to get Salieri to write this opera down for him, this piece of music, and he's singing it and kind of, motioning his hands and everything. And he's like, "Do you have it? Do you have it?" And it's like his mind is going 90 miles an hour, even though he looks dead. Like he looks like he's already halfway into the grave already. Yet this music is keeping him alive. And to me, that's one of the best parts of this film by far. It just blows me away every time I see that scene because it's just, he is living because of the music. And that's the only reason why.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's in my notes. That's the last scene I wrote down. This is the best scene of the film.
Oh, yeah.
It's great, and I kind of see where he's going. Like this man is obsessed. He has to get
Yeah.
this out here, this last opera, but he's basically drinking himself and just killing himself. And
Yeah.
I mean, goes back to the old thing we all learned from Blazing Saddles: is you got to eat.
Right.
A man like that doesn't eat, he's gonna die.
Yeah.
And that's very good. I like sort of this psyche. I guess as we get into it next, let's talk about Katerina a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
So Elizabeth Barrage, I looked into her, and she hasn't been into a ton. I think she's very good in this movie. I think she comes across as someone who cares about her husband so much, but at the same time, she goes through it. She is living in this world where they're not happy. They are living their separate lives, and I guess that's the tough part. Is if your husband is this sort of brilliant guy that's in his own world most of the time, I mean, you're going to feel neglected. You're going to feel like you don't really know much. And she loves him. That comes across in the performance. I don't know. It's just a very complicated sort of relationship.
So when I was watching the behind the scenes stuff for this film, they talked about, and I can't even remember, somebody else was in this part before Elizabeth Barrage, but whoever it was, they had like an accident on a horse and broke their ankle, so they had to get Elizabeth to come in. And I gotta say, and I tried really hard to find negatives in this film. And at first, this character was kind of a negative, but then as I went back and watched it again, she got better and better. And I really love Elizabeth's performance as Katerina. I think she's also very genuine in her performance, and she really loves Mozart. Probably one of the few people that loves Amadeus purely and not just for his talent or whatever. I think she genuinely cares for him. She sticks up for him. She brings his music to Salieri to help out and everything, and just bends over backwards for Amadeus, and one of the few people that really will do that in his life. I just find her performance very charming and just very sweet, very, very sweet and caring. And I don't know why it took me a couple watches and what I was missing. But yeah, I think she's really, really good in this performance.
Yeah, maybe it's just you maturing a little bit or something, or I don't know. Because I agree with you. Like it's one of those things that you understand the subtleties and the depth of her character more you watch it.
Yep.
Like to me, I'm very impressed with. She's like Mozart. She's not of this world. She is a commoner more so than he is. I mean, she was just the daughter of the landlady, and we get that from her introduction and her mom's introduction, and how we just saw this great opera. Everybody's cheering for Mozart, and then here come these ladies to embarrass him, and it's great. He just dumps a bucket of water on her to wake it up. I just can't imagine his embarrassment. But I think from there we also see how her father-in-law looks at her. She is viewed as lesser, and she's like, no, I'm here because I love Wolfie. He's a great dude. I got to be here for him because he needs help, because otherwise he'd spend all his money and never go out and try to find a job. So I think she's great because she's, like I said earlier, her character's complicated. She's juggling a lot of different things, and I think her performance comes across. I hated that she didn't do a ton, and I guess that gets into something I was going to bring up before I forget about it. I guess a timeout from our discussion.
Sure.
But I would not recast these two guys that play Mozart and Salieri at all.
Yeah.
But did you know who played these guys originally on stage?
I think I've heard, but go ahead.
This blew my mind. Ian McClellan as Salieri and Tim Curry as Mozart.
Wow.
Wouldn't you love to see that, man?
I would love to see that. Absolutely, I would. That sounds amazing, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. That blew my mind when I read that. I was like, man, that's the only people I would actually recast here. But I still love these guys. But let's get into, so both of these guys had daddy issues, I think. Salieri did with his father.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy. We didn't even talk about his miracle that he prayed for where his dad dies.
Yeah.
But then Papa, Leopold Mozart, this guy, when he shows up, the movie changes, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. He's, to me, sort of a I don't even know what the word is. I'm trying to say, it's like he is definitely not supportive of Mozart whatsoever as far as music's concerned. I think he thinks it's kind of ridiculous. And you mentioned how he interacts with Katerina. He's very cold the entire film. Good performance, but definitely a cold character for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a big part of why Mozart is, I don't know, it seems like he has sort of inferiority complex a little bit because of the way his dad raised him. I know he thinks he's above everything. Like, he doesn't feel bad about correcting the Emperor of Austria or anything like that.
No.
But his daddy's definitely his kryptonite. And that we get that with the scenes that they share. I mean, he wants his dad's respect. He wants to please his father like everybody does. And it seems like he's never going to get it. That he's making this brilliant art, but that's not enough. He wants the success too. That's why he's like, come back to Salzburg. I can watch over you. I can manage your career basically. Because without me, you married a commoner. You could have been an eligible bachelor. You could have done anything, but instead you married this silly girl. And then you and yourself are silly. You're going around embarrassing us, dressing up as a unicorn at a party. Which I guess we got to get into that scene.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one of the best scenes of the film, I think. Yet again, the whole mass scene. I love it how she's a swan. She's becoming beautiful before their eyes. He's the weirdo unicorn, and the dad is the judge.
Yeah,
it's great.
I mean, and I can only speak from the father-son point of view, and I've just pointed my father like we all have, but my dad's come around and we make up and everything's great. With this guy, with Mr. Mozart here, it's like Wolfie can't do anything to please his dad. I don't think anything would make his dad happy unless he went with him and did exactly what he was saying. And kind of feel for Amadeus in that part. As you're a parent now, be that way too, as far as like you want to do good with your son and everything, but like he doesn't have to live under your thumb like this guy, right? I mean, that's how do you see that?
Yeah, I think he thinks he's doing good. I think he thinks he's a good dad and that he's looking out for it. But at the same time, it's sort of one of those things where you're doing it for yourself more because I think sort of like Salieri.
Yeah,
he wants the security that his son's gonna be good and be wealthy, and I guess it comes from whenever they were younger and they would go around and hang out with the royals, and maybe he felt like this is sort of my ticket into this lifestyle.
Yeah,
hanging out with these people, the important people of the world. So I get that a little from him, and I just think it's interesting that this is how Salieri decides to torture this man, is by basically invoking his dead father and making him create this last piece of music. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I want to talk about these operas a little bit. I was just saying that the musical chair scene is probably my favorite. Several scenes in this movie, they're all my favorite. But I guess, before I get into operas, I got to talk about the funny scene. Where Salieri decides I got to get revenge on this guy after
Yeah.
he humiliates him at this party.
Yeah.
Just crazy acting done by Halsey as he's playing all these different songs upside down and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd is into it. We're just in this party with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so funny when he does, oh, Salieri.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one. He plays it, then he ends with a fart.
Yeah.
It's just great because Salieri that's not what he was expecting. He was expecting, oh, he's
No.
just going to play my songs or
Yeah.
something like that because he's the one that brought it up. He's like,
Right.
Salieri.
Right.
And so he's asking for this to be embarrassed. And I don't know. This is just a very fascinating scene that this is the scene that triggers him to wanting his revenge fully.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we said before, you can definitely see the motivations between each two people. Mozart just wants to have fun and wants to just be goofy and, not be so serious, at least at this point. Whereas, Salieri is so hooked to his pride and he is so humiliated that he has to take Mozart down. And so he comes up with this, elaborate scheme to get him back. And you're just like, dude, just chill out. But he can't. He is so focused on this that he feels like there's no other choice but to take this guy out.
Yeah, it's a slow corruption by him. Like at
Yeah.
first, I think he's just kind of like envious. He's kind of like, yeah, we're rivals.
Yeah.
But then he decides, like the original sin is the whole thing with when he comes in contact with Mozart's music.
Yeah.
When he reads what this guy just wrote on first draft, and that's when his envy becomes like, I got to do something here. The original sin, I think he's tempted by Katerina, as he's nearly corrupts himself there, but then after that he gets easier. He's like, I'm going to crush this guy's career. Like I'm going to make sure when he hosts an opera, it's only going to last for 6 shows or something like that. This guy, he was very devious, and I think we still kind of like him. We like the scenes with him, but he's just a terrible dude.
I mean, like I said before, I love F. Murray Abraham's performance of this character, but make no mistake, this guy is a bad dude because and I say that as somebody that I hold on to music very tightly. Music's always been part of my life, and I hate the fact, like, when he asks, and I think I mentioned this earlier in the episode, but when he asks the priest about how well are you trained in music, I hate that. I hate that so much because to me, music should be shared and not like lorded over and like I know more than you. And that's what this guy wants to do. He wants to be known as someone that's not just on Mozart's level, but maybe even better, at least eventually better. And he just never gets there. And so because of that motivation and that not coming through, he becomes the devil in a sense. And he's just like, I gotta tear this guy down any way possible. I don't care if it humiliates his wife, his mom, whoever. And he just becomes maniacal. And I know, like we said before, that the real history is not as brutal, but I mean, I would have hated in that situation, and that's just something that just irks me about that. But yeah, so it's a little personal to me, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I like what you said. You were talking about way music should be, like the nature of music, and I like it that Salieri, he can experience that. Like when he's a kid and he gets touched by the music in the church, and then same thing when he hears the wonderful piece of music Mozart does where it's an oboe, but then it becomes a clarinet. I wish I knew what that was. But Mozart's great at that, like blending these instruments around.
Yeah,
because he understands it on a spiritual level. Like he just breathes music, and I think there's several scenes that really capture that. Obviously, when he's writing the music, but also even the scene I was talking about earlier, where everybody's just crowded around the piano. They're all enjoying it. They're all experiencing the music together. And definitely those operas, like this is why this movie really just jumps for me, because I'm a musical freak. I love watching big musical numbers and just the way that they orchestrate all these moving parts, all these actors moving around, the singing that they're doing, the instrumentation it's just breathtaking. Like if you don't feel anything from like watching those scenes, then you probably just don't like movies as much as me.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you at 100%. I mean, with my background, I've done some musical theater, which is kind of like opera, like I said earlier, but I never really got the opportunity to do an opera. So I don't really have experience with that. Just watching this film and listening to this complex music, because I mean, a lot of times you could have one person doing something crazy over here, and then another person doing something crazy over there, and they might get together a little bit, and then it just goes nuts. And it's just, I mean, if you sit down and listen to these operas that go like that, I mean, it's amazing. And I know there are some operas out there, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, that are actually vulgar that people just sing, and it's like because it's in a different language, nobody's, I guess, realizing what they're saying, but that's kind of a surprise. But yeah, I love the fact that music is so much a part of this film that they didn't just gloss over it or skip it altogether. I love that it is definitely almost a character in its own right, because it should be, because I think that's the point of this whole thing, is what this music at the time did for these people. And it made me think about when I first went to college and we roomed together. I was a music major, and I would into these people that were extremely talented in music, and they knew it, and they would kind of act like Salieri a little bit, and they could, be a little bit uppity and whatnot. And I kind of thought about that when I was watching this the other day, how like they know they're good, and they're gonna make sure you know you're good. And it's funny how music makes people act certain ways. I know I'm going on a tangent. I apologize. But yeah, I'm just so glad that the music in this film that is featured, it just shows the brilliance. Doesn't just talk about it, but it shows the brilliance of what Mozart did.
Yeah, and the filmmaking is amazing here. Like
Mm.
just how they captured this music, how it's mixed in the
Yeah.
post production. Like
Yep.
if you get a great set of headphones or good
Oh yeah.
speakers, you're gonna really love this film.
Exactly.
And yeah, music it's great. It's a binding force. Everybody experiences, even if you don't understand it. Even if you're
Mm.
like the Emperor Joseph is like, I just saw something amazing. I don't know why it was amazing, but it was.
Mm.
That's music. That's art. And
Yep.
I think Mozart created that, and that's so cool that these people got to experience that. And Salieri recognizes that. He recognizes this is amazing what this
Mhm.
guy's done. Even when he just looks at the notes on the page,
Yep.
it's like this is amazing. And I love it how they included that detail in the movie.
Oh yeah.
That basically he sees the notes and he hears it in his head.
Mm-hmm.
So cool, so cool.
Yep.
And I think brings up one of the interesting conflicts of the film.
Mm.
The whole German versus Italian thing. I don't know what you thought about that. It's something that I wrote down as like this was a historically accurate thing, I think, that they captured here.
Yeah, as far as like who does better music, I mean, like what were you trying to talk? What are you trying to say?
I don't know. I think that it's sort of a culture issue in this film. And it gets into the whole status quo versus change thing. Happening is that Mozart, he's an agent of change. He's an artist.
Yeah.
And he's fighting against the status quo of people that say, that's too many notes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
Opera should be in Italian.
the too many notes thing. Oh my gosh.
German versus Italian. What do you think?
To me, music's music, man. If it's a good song in German, then it's a good song. If it's a good song in Italian, then it's a good song. I don't want to get it hung up on because it's German and it's got to be good, or because it's Italian it's going to be good. I mean, I feel like that's what people do nowadays. And they're like, if you say you like country, then you like this person, or, rock or whatever. And so I try not to get hung up on like the particulars and all of that, because I don't want to, kind of like what we do on the show. I don't want to bash something that people love just because I don't. You know what I mean? It's just kind of how I feel on it, because like I said earlier, music very personal to me, and while I'm a grown man and I can take criticism, I just don't want to be overly critical of something that somebody else likes, even if I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why I like this tool is
Yeah.
what they're using it as we've been saying the whole time. It's about the whole movie's about music pretty much.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think early on, some people are using it sort of like you were talking about the music majors. And they're like, Italian is the true art form. German
Yeah.
is vulgar.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be in that. Meanwhile, Amadeus is like, no, it's German is my life. It's emotion. It's the world around us. This is what we should be speaking right now.
Yeah.
I think he eventually embraces Italian because he's like, this language has beauty too. Like an opera in Italian is a new way of communicating. He doesn't really see the barriers that the other guys see. And I think that's a really cool tool
Good point.
used in the film. I don't know. We got a lot.
Man, we could go about 4 hours, pretty much.
I mean, at its core, we've been talking about sort of as the downfall of Salieri. But we also see sort of makes this a double tragedy as we see the degradation of Mozart.
Yeah.
What do you think kind of ruins him? What brings about his end, you think?
That's a great question. You really just feel sorry for the guy because I really feel like that a lot of people probably, at least at that time period, I think a lot of people just thought he was some, punk kid that made these vulgar music and just didn't have the respect. Like Salieri doesn't respect him, obviously. And even though he respects the music, he just doesn't like care the person. And I think that maybe that was shared a little bit with a lot of people in that era.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is sort of man versus society thing.
Yeah.
How he doesn't really fit with what they are about. He's got different values. He's got a different way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is the public's fault. They don't understand his brilliance at the time.
Yeah.
Even though I think toward the end we start to see that they were going to embrace it as
That's true.
we start to see his music kind of being shown in like the common people. They're into it. And I think that's another thing I was going back to how they capture this era is the common people, the middle class is coming up.
Right.
And Mozart just kind of missed out on it, unfortunately. But I think that's part of it. I think it's also obviously Salieri had a play in it. He's the one that put this immense pressure on this guy to create this opera about his dead dad. That is insane, the mental anguish it puts him through.
Right.
But I think he brought a little bit upon himself because he was so, I guess, just fixed in what he thought music should be and people that should enjoy it. I mean, I feel so bad when he shows up at that one house and he just makes fools of these people and basically says, there we go, I tamed your dog.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for those people because they could have helped him out later on and they didn't.
Right.
And they were people that genuinely wanted him to come and teach music. And he's just so fixed in his ways, so against the tutoring people that he misses out on something. So I think he's a little bit of his own worst enemy in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. When you have a pedestal that you're on and people know you, like people knew Mozart, and I think for a long time respected his music. But then when they met the guy, it was kind of like, okay, this guy's a little bit weird, like you said, not like the status quo, so to speak. So it probably put a lot of people off. For that, I feel bad for him and everything. But I think there's no argument saying that he wasn't a musical genius and that he didn't make music that nobody was making, or maybe even has made sense. I mean, if you listen to this soundtrack and you just listen to this music, I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable that it came from somebody that's being portrayed as this man-child. And maybe it wasn't as bad back then, and maybe they dramatized it up a little bit. But it is kind of interesting to make that comparison. Like, this guy that's making part ways is just being kind of like a man-child is making all these very complex and very emotional pieces of music that just really grab you by the heartstrings.
Yeah, it's just a kind of complicated thing that
It is.
that kind of ends him. It's a very complicated movie as we spent so long talking about it.
Oh yeah.
But I really want to talk about the last scene with Mozart. We've touched upon it a little bit already. We see him creating. He's putting all his last little ounce of life into it. Then Katerina comes back to him. It's sort of like a race against time because you think the first time you watch it, it's like, oh, she's gonna come save him. Basically,
Yeah,
she's gonna
yeah.
perk him up, and I guess briefly he gets to see her. It's a great scene. He's like, oh, you're here, and then he just passes like that, and
Yeah.
it's very unsettling. I don't know, this last scene with him. It's just a very, like all these scenes I've been talking about. They're just the best scenes of almost any movie.
Look, like I said before, and no offense to F. Murray Abraham, but this part of the film that I think wins the Oscar for Tom. I think you see a guy that is literally got one foot in the grave and, gets to see his wife one last time, who truly loves him, and he truly loves her. So I think there's that. But he's taking his last breath basically right there. And it's such an emotional punch in the gut. And I think that it was everything that he had been through his upbringing, through his professional life, all that. And what happened? He dies in a bed, and it's a really tragic ending and kind of sad.
Especially when they bury him. It's just
Oh, yeah.
it's just insult to injury, man.
Yeah. It's very moving. Yeah, I get teared up even just thinking about it, but watching it, you get teared up a little bit to know that this guy is now just, of the ages, as they say. And, but just an all around just beautiful film with a ton of great performances. But as I said, I think Tom Hulsey is the MVP of this show. I just really feel like that he is the star of the show, in my opinion. But if you disagree, and let us know in the comments if you do disagree with that and want to argue that, I'm more than welcome to hear you.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna cheat here. I'm gonna say it's everything about the movie. It's the
Yeah,
writers
right.
that spent forever on the script. It's the
You're right.
direction, Milos Forman. It's
Oh, yeah.
Tom.
It's
It's F.
everything.
Murray Abraham. It's like all these pieces working together, and I think that's when you know you have a great film is when everybody's just going 110%.
Without a doubt.
And I think that we got that from everybody that did the costumes, the lighting, the music, from those guys to every single actor that's shot in the movie. I think it's a whole team effort, and I think it's a great piece of cinema that I'm so happy I finally watched.
Could not say it better myself, man. This has been a lot of fun. It's been a long time coming. I know we talked about doing this for, a couple of years now. And I was so excited when I talked to you after the first time you watched this and you fell in love with this film as much, if not more, than I did. But I think we're pretty much equal on the love part, by the way. So glad that happened. And so glad that you guys tuned in. Look, what do you think of Amadeus? What's your favorite part in the film? Scene, character, whatever? Let us know in the comments. Hey man, we got some cool stuff coming up here pretty soon. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel here at SuperCaZt. And also make sure you follow us on the Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days at the SuperCaZt. Final thoughts, man. What do you think?
Great film. I'll watch it again. It's a 11 out of 10 movie. There's only a few of them out there, and this is definitely one of them. It's awesome.
Very well said, sir. Well, again, thanks everybody for joining us here on the SuperCaZt. For my buddy and co-host, the Stevesy, I am the Super Bosch, and we'll see you all next time on the SuperCaZt.